Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Life Point Community Church. We are still online, as you can see, and I want to thank you all for your feedback and getting back to us on the survey that we sent out last week. I hear you and totally agree with the 70% who think we should stay online for just a few more weeks. I know you are all eager to get back to meeting face to face, and I am too, but let's go slow for now. I am meeting with the theatre this week to talk about the reopening strategies and just to make sure that we are all set to go once we do decide to meet again. Until then, I'm so happy that we can continue to meet online. Our Tuesday evening grief support group is doing really well meeting online. We have people all over meeting via Zoom. So this online thing is actually working, and I'm so thankful for that. Well, happy Father's Day to all you wonderful fathers, and may you enjoy this day and be blessed as you celebrate the joys and memories of fatherhood. During the Good Friday service, we had a corporate video on the Lord's Prayer, and I thought I'd play that again for you today as our prayer for this morning. May we remember that the unity that we have in Jesus as we pray this prayer together. Amen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Que ton règne vienne, que ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel.
私たちの日常の糧を今日もお与えください。私たちの負い目をお許しください。
Leid ons niet in verzoeking, maar veles om de boze.
Porque tuyo es el reino, el poder.
Forever and ever. Amen.
Jesus, keep me from all wrong. I'll be satisfied as long as I walk, dear Lord, close to Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant Jesus is my daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Now through this world of toils and snares, if the falter, Lord, who cares? None but Thee, dear Lord, none but Thee. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. When my feeble life is o'er, time for me will be no more. Guide me gently, safely o'er to Thy kingdom shore, to Thy shore. Just a closer walk with Thee. Grant Jesus is my plea. Daily walking close to Thee. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be. Let it be, dear Lord, let it be.
Good morning, friends. Today I'm going to teach you from the 139th Psalm. It's a very well-known part of the Bible. You've probably read it before, and almost certainly you've read parts of this before. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you this psalm from beginning to end. And as I do that, you'll begin to understand why these words are among the most loved and the most comforting in the whole of the Bible. Okay, so the first thing that we see are some instructions. We're told that what we're looking at here are words that were written for the director of music. So that's pretty clear. There's no mistaking what this is. This is some kind of a song, and it was, probably in the song book that worshippers would sing from whenever they went to the Jewish temple. And that's a pretty important little detail. What's that? That's telling us that when, Joe Bloggs, who lived in Nazareth, twice a year, that guy would take a break from his work and he'd spend 4 days walking to Jerusalem for religious reasons. So he could, celebrate the Passover or Yom Kippur or one of the big festivals of the Jewish faith. And after having walked to Jerusalem for 4 days, he'd make his way into the temple. And these words that we're about to read together was part of the liturgy that was used to guide ordinary men and women like that in their worship and in their thoughts during these religious times. Very interesting. We also learn there that these words were written with the life of King David in mind. Then we get into the opening verse itself, the opening line of the song, which says, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me." So that's classic religious thought. Look closely at the verse. What you have in this sentence is the word me. It's used twice for emphasis. So this man has spent 4 days of his life walking to Jerusalem so he could do something religious at the temple. And when he gets to the temple, the first thing that he thinks about is himself. And that's always the case, of course. Every single time that you pray, every single time that you show up in church, every single time that you sing some kind of a religious song, you're thinking about your life and about the things that you're doing and about the things that you are going through. And that's fair enough. Listen, we never ever pray in a vacuum. We never express our faith in a vacuum. So at the moment, to pray is, of course, to think about COVID-19 and the pressure it's putting us under. It's to think about the COVID economy and our jobs and our bills and our livelihoods and what the next 6 months of our lives might look like. At the moment, to pray is to think about our health and our well-being and our families and our relationships. The faith that we have together is always about me and about what I'm going through. And I just like that this opening line of the song is honest about that. I'm talking about me and I'm thinking about me. Totally fair enough. And notice, though, that the other word that's used twice in this sentence is the word you, by which he means God. So worship at its rawest, most honest form is, I've come here to think about me and about you. That's worship. Thinking about yourself isn't all that religious. You can be worried all on your own. You can be anxious all on your own. You can be fearful all on your own. You can be broke all on your own. You don't need God for that. But faith happens when you take your very human emotions and decide to experience them no longer on your own, but with God. So here's Here's the first line of this worship song. I have come here to think about me and you. Nice. Then he says, you know when I sit and when I rise, you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. So what's going on here is this man has come to a religious place. He's in the temple, but really he could be anywhere. He could be kneeling by his bedside or standing in church, and he's thinking about his own life, probably about all of the difficult things that he's going through, and he's thinking about God and what God might have to do with his life at the moment. And the first thing that he's aware of in worship is that this God knows him. I mean, really knows him. His God is a God who knows. And of all the words that the Bible uses to describe God and what God is like and what God is and what God does, the word knowledge is perhaps the most amazing of them all. So this word is the Hebrew word yada. And sometimes in the Bible, the word yada is used to describe what passes between a husband and wife in the bedroom. So the Bible would say something like, Mr. Smith took Mrs. Smith by the hand and he led her upstairs and went into the bedroom and he yada'd her. And in those contexts, of course, the word know and the word knowledge refer to a very close and a very special and a very unique, intimate relationship. And so it's fascinating that the Bible writers take this exact word for human intimacy and they use it to describe God's knowledge of you. His knowledge of you is naked, I guess is the point. It's a strange thing to say. I've never heard anyone say it like that before. God's knowledge of you is naked. What do I mean by that? Well, naked in that it's not fooled by the face that you have to wear. But you know what I mean? We all have to wear a face sometimes. If you're scared about something, you can't let your children know, so you put on a face. If you're feeling insecure about something, you don't want your colleagues to know, so you put on a confident face. If you're feeling sad, blue and depressed, you don't want to bore the world with how you're feeling, so you put on a happy face. Putting on a face is a skill that we learn, and we learn it young. But here in worship, we are reminded that God sees beyond the face that we put on. He sees beyond our brave face and our confident face and our happy face. And he knows us as we truly are, naked. Now, having said that, think for a moment about why this man in worship would want to remind himself that God knows him as he really is, that God knows the real story of his life. Why would he need to feel that? I think it's pretty obvious. What has to be going on in your life for you to take comfort from the fact that God knows the real story? That God knows the real you? That God knows the truth of who you are and what you did and what really went down? What has to be going on in your life for you to take comfort from those thoughts? Exactly. I think what's going on in this verse is this man is coming from a place where he was under attack. I think people were telling stories about him. I think people were accusing him of things. I think people were painting him in the worst possible light and judging him in the worst possible ways. And so here, in the moment of worship, kneeling by his bedside, he takes comfort in the fact that at least God knows the truth. Now, that's not to say he's perfect. He isn't. I mean, this this psalm is modelled after the life of David, after all, who went through some pretty sketchy episodes. But nevertheless, this man feels that, deep down, he's an okay kind of guy. Deep down, he always tried to do the right thing. He always tried to treat people fairly and honestly and give everyone a fair shake. And, genuinely, he set out to live a decent life. And, yeah, of course, it didn't always work out for him. It doesn't, work out for lots of people. But nevertheless, the default position of his heart is that he thinks he's an okay kind of guy. So what he's saying here in worship is, God, everyone else thinks I'm this monster and everyone else is telling these stories about me, but I'm comforted to know that at least you know me. And at least you know the truth and you know the whole story. And I'm okay with what you know, because other people are not my judge. You are my judge. And God, remember, is a kinder judge than most. Then he says something that's pretty weird. It's honest, but it's weird. Weird to say in worship, at least. Look at what he says next. He says, remember, this is in worship. This isn't a songbook. He says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, your right hand will hold me fast. So, yeah, having spoken about the idea that God sees him and God knows him, he then immediately says, you know what, sometimes I just feel like running away. And the person I want to run away from is God. And in the Bible, this impulse to run away from God, and presumably to run away from morality and decency and all the things that normally hold your life in some kind of check and even keel, that impulse is all throughout the Bible, starting from page 3. The idea of a God who knows us and who sees us, most of the time that's comforting and we love it. But sometimes it's tiring and it's awkward. Let me put it to you like this. The worst thing about Christianity is that, you can't take a holiday from it. Do you know what I mean? And I think this writer just wants a break from being the good guy. Because being the good guy is tiring. This is a man who says, I'm always making good choices and I'm tired of always saying no to sin, and I'm tired of always resisting temptation, and I'm tired of always being the one who has to put up with the nonsense and put on the smiley face and always be responsible and always be respectable. And the reason why I try to choose right and say no to sin and put up with all the morons and idiots I have to put up with in my life, the reason I'm that kind of a good person is because of my faith. It's because I'm a Christian. And my Christianity informs my morality and my ethics and my behaviour and my decency. It drives all of my behaviour in this world. And I'm good with that. But just every now and again, man, I want to take a break from it. Do you know what I mean? And so when you look at the sentiment in this verse, which is really talking about taking a break from God, that's what it's talking about. I think it would be a lucky person indeed who went through their whole life without feeling this sentiment at least once. And I think if you don't know what this sentiment feels like, then you probably don't know what morality feels like, or ethics feels like, or decency or responsibility feel like. If you don't occasionally feel like taking a break from who you are, then that's probably a whole other conversation that we need to have. But for most of us, let's just admit it. Responsibilities are tiring. Morality is tiring. Decency is tiring. Being the good guy is tiring. So this guy feels in worship like running away. And what's brilliant for me about this is that, again, this is in worship. This is in the song book. These feelings about wanting to take a break from God are expressed in an act of prayer, worship, and devotion. And that's just awesome because it's true. So he says this, and, in saying it, he speaks the language of Adam in the Garden of Eden. He speaks the language of Jonah, as he wants to flee to Tarshish. God, I want to run away. Who hasn't felt that? Especially when all you got from your morality and your decency and your hard work and your kindness was a slap in the face anyway. So, there you are. You spent years of your life trying to do the right thing and trying to be the good guy, and they still turned around and hurt you and stabbed you in the back. So what's the point? May as well run away and start over somewhere else. That's what he's feeling. But as soon as he thinks about running away, he remembers. And what he remembers is that, you can run away. It's perfectly doable. You can run away. But when you get to wherever you've run away to, you're still you. That's the problem. And that's why running away from problems is such a terrible idea, and it doesn't work. Because wherever you go, there you are. And of course, from the point of view of this writer, you are still subject to the scrutiny of a God who always sees and who always knows. I think he's just getting it off his chest. Fair enough. Then he says, pardon me, he says, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you, and the night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. So when we talk about darkness in the Bible, we're talking about, definitely a negative experience. And the problem with being in the dark is that, you just can't see. Sometimes you can't see what's right. Sometimes you can't see what your next course of action should be. Sometimes you can't see what choice you should make in this situation. Sometimes you can't see how you're going to figure a way out of this darkness that you're in. Sometimes you can't see what's good. So I like that this writer says that even there, even in the dark place, even in the demimonde of this world, God's always there, and the darkness makes no difference to God. And, I think that's just so important because, when life's going well and, everything's tickety-boo and, your job's going great and your finances are going great and your health's great and your family are great and you can really feel your faith. You don't, it's all right. You don't need to seek God's presence because you kind of feel it. But when everything falls off the skids and you can't sleep at night because you're scared, and you don't know what you're going to do, and you don't know how you're going to survive, and everything's up in the air, I think it's really important then to remember that God is with you. You are not alone. You are never alone. Even in the darkness, the light of God will lead you forward. It's such an important thing to remember. Next verse. Oh yes, very familiar. He says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. So, here he's sticking with the idea that the God he's worshipping is a God who knows his own life. And in this verse, the point he makes is that God has known him from the very beginning of his story. So on page 1 of the Bible, there's this idea that the Spirit of God is there in the dark, bringing the world together. And this writer takes that idea and applies it to his own personal story. He says, at the very start of my own story, at the very start of my journey through this life, when I was in the darkness of my mother's womb, even there, God knew me. Even there, God was with me, bringing the days of my life together. You are never alone. Your story is never independent of the God who loves you and the God who has a plan for you. So amazing. He says, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. What that's saying is that like any story, your life had a beginning, and in the beginning God was there. And the implication is that now in the middle of your story, in the ups of your story, in the downs of your story, in the sadnesses of your story, in the successes of your story, in the will I make it, will I survive parts of your story, God is there. And at the very end of your story, as the curtain finally closes, God is there too. There is never a part of your story where God isn't there with love and with knowledge and with care. So good. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to pass. Now, I don't know what that means. Can't know everything. No, I'm just kidding. I do know what it means. So, no, I don't know if that means that all our days are numbered or not. Maybe they are, maybe they're, perhaps that's not the case. But what this writer is saying here is that all of his days are in God's hands. All of them. The good ones and the bad ones. They're all in God's hands. This writer would say that there's no such thing as a godless day. There's no such thing as a season in life where God is not there. He's always there, involved in your story. So for us, when we go through a rough patch in life, or when we have a particularly hard time, from our perspective, that is not the plan. And I think that's something that we've been saying a lot of lately. When we celebrated New Year's 6 months ago, and we said, yeah, 2020 is going to be a great year, it didn't turn out quite the way we thought it might. We had all sorts of plans that we were going to be working on. We had all sorts of things that we were going to do. We were going to save a certain amount of money, or take a certain trip, or finish a certain course or whatever. And it just didn't work out. What we ended up with was a whole bunch of things we just didn't want. But the idea here is that none of the things that take us by surprise take God by surprise. It's almost like he's saying, when God was with you in the dark womb of your mother, he saw all the days of your life that lay before you, even the ones you have yet to live. And he knows what his plans are. Plans that the Bible says elsewhere are very good, and very pleasing, and in fact, perfect. So I guess that this item of worship is saying that God is involved, deeply, personally involved in the project of your life. And trust me, there is a plan. I know it doesn't feel like that all the time. It certainly doesn't feel like that at the moment. But in faith, we believe that there is a plan. And one day, with our own eyes, we'll see it. And happily so. Then what he says next is so lovely. Excuse me. He says, how precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. And when I awake, I am still with you. So this is another example of how closely God is involved in the story of your life. I think I said to you a few weeks ago, I think I did anyway, that of all of the hard things that the Bible asks you to believe, none are harder than this idea that that God actually thinks about you, that you are actually on God's mind all the time, that right now in heaven, God is thinking about you and what you're going through and what you're worried about and what's going on in your life. And regarding those thoughts, this psalm says that they are vast, that they outnumber the grains of sand. What he means by this is that not just that God thinks about you, but he thinks about you a lot, like all the time. And what I especially like about this verse is, notice he says, how does he put it? He says, yeah, when I awake, I am still with you. So the thought here is, this is a man who's just, he's had a terrible night. And the reason he's had a terrible night is because he is worried about stuff. He's worried about his health, about his finances, about his family. He is stressed out of his eyeballs, and he's lying awake at 3 a.m. and he just can't get to sleep, and then he eventually nods off at like 5, and then an hour later his alarm goes off, and the picture here is God is right there the second he wakes up, saying, hey, I'm with you. I've always been with you. And I've got you. And you're going to be all right. Okay? So good. Then having said all that comforting stuff, he turns dark for a moment. Look at how he ends this worship on an aggressive note. Remember, this is a man who's got enemies. This is a man who has trouble. This is a man who's being accused of all sorts of things. He says, if only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. So I actually quite like that. This worship has lots of comfort to it, but the comfort brings a challenge. And the challenge it brings is that we are to hate the things that God hates. We are to take a stand against the things that God is against. We are to speak truth whenever there are lies. We are to be kind wherever there is cruelty. So I guess this is kind of a Christian ethic. It is to go through life and to feel strongly about the things that God feels strongly about. To love the things that God loves and to hate the things that God hates. And what this worshipper is saying is, I think I'm on the right side. I think my head is screwed on straight, and just in case it's not, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. In other words, I think I know what right and wrong are, and I think, as I said, I think I'm on the right side of that debate, but I can never be sure. So God, just in case I'm wrong, search me, test me, and lead me. Ultimately, this is his prayer. This is how he ends with this worship. Lead me in the way everlasting. All right, so, pretty good. That's Psalm 139. It's a huge favourite of mine, and I hope now it's a favourite of yours as well. Listen, these are very uncertain times. For the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been thinking that quarantine was going to be over. I was thinking that we were going to, pretty soon be back to being able to be together. But, I don't know. just taking 1 week at a time at the moment, and I guess we all are. So, keep your chin up and, your head screwed on straight, and put your best foot forward and believe in faith that everything's going to be okay. And, in these crazy times, and the world is crazy at the moment. I don't think any of us have ever known a time quite like this. I pray for you as I pray for myself. And my prayer is the prayer of Psalm 139. Lord, will you lead me in the right way, on the right paths, to a brighter and a better tomorrow. God bless you. Thank you for inviting us into your home, and look forward to seeing you one way or the other next Sunday. God bless.